Welcome back, traveler. The fire is warm, and every fire has its story, so cozy up and prepare yourself for tonight's tale. For tonight's story is not written in the pages of history, but whispered between smoke and memory. Join me by the fire and enjoy the story. There are some nights in life that feel ordinary while you are living them. A quiet road, a warm fire, a drink shared between strangers. You never realize those moments are the beginning of something much larger until years later, when you look back and understand that one small choice changed the path you were walking forever. This is the story of how I found the map, and how a simple search for forgotten gold became an adventure none of us were prepared for. It began in a small town surrounded by endless forests and old mountain roads, a place called Ravenbrook Hollow. Travelers often passed through Ravenbrook Hollow, not because it was famous, but because it was one of the last safe places before the wilderness beyond. The kind of town where merchants stopped for supplies, hunters rested after long journeys, and adventurers traded stories over cheap meals and warm drinks. At the center of the town stood an old wooden tavern called the Silver Lantern. The tavern had been there longer than anyone could remember. Its wooden walls were covered with old swords, faded paintings, and strange objects brought back from distant lands. Some people said the owner kept these things as decorations. Others believed every item had a story behind it. That night, I was sitting near the fireplace, listening to the sound of rain tapping against the windows. Across from me sat my companions. Thomas was the first to join me on my travels. He was practical, calm, and always the one reminding us when an idea was probably a terrible one, which, unfortunately for him, meant he was usually right. Beside him sat Daniel, who had a completely different way of looking at the world. Where Thomas saw danger, Daniel saw opportunity. Where Thomas saw a locked door, Daniel wondered what treasure was hidden behind it. And then there was Sarah. She was the one who noticed things everyone else missed. Old symbols, hidden paths, small details that could change everything. The four of us had traveled together for years, but nothing we had done before compared to what happened that night inside the Silver Lantern. A man entered the tavern just before midnight. He looked like someone who had spent most of his life on the road. His coat was torn, his boots were covered in mud, and in his hand he carried an old leather pouch that looked older than the town itself. The entire tavern slowly became quiet, because everyone could tell this man was carrying a story. He sat near the fire and ordered a drink. For a while, nobody bothered him, until Daniel, being Daniel, finally walked over. "Long journey?" he asked. The stranger looked up. A journey that should have ended many years ago. That answer caught everyone's attention. The man reached into his pouch and placed something on the table. A piece of parchment, an old map. At first glance, it looked like a simple drawing of mountains and forests. But then Sarah noticed something. 3 symbols marked across the map. 3 circles, 3 locations, 3 paths leading toward the same place. "What is it?" she asked. The old traveler looked around the room before speaking. "Gold." The word alone was enough to wake up every person nearby. But he continued, "Not ordinary gold. A treasure hidden by a group of explorers who vanished over 100 years ago." Thomas crossed his arms. "Then why hasn't anyone found it?" The man stared into the fire. because the map does not lead directly to the treasure. He pointed at the 3 symbols. These are the markers. The first one shows you the way. The second one proves you are worthy of continuing. And the third, he paused. The third reveals where the gold truly rests. The tavern became silent. Even the rain outside seemed quieter. Daniel smiled. So you're telling us there is a hidden treasure, protected by a forgotten trail, and nobody has found it because they couldn't follow 3 simple markers. The old man looked at him. Many have tried. And the stranger took a slow breath. They never returned. Thomas immediately looked at us. The expression on his face said exactly what he was thinking. This was a bad idea. A very bad idea. But the truth was, something about that map felt different. It wasn't just the promise of treasure. It was the mystery. The feeling that there was something waiting beyond those mountains. Something forgotten. The old traveler eventually left the tavern before dawn, but he left one thing behind, the map, and somehow it ended up in my hands. For a long time, none of us spoke. We all knew what the decision meant. Following that map meant leaving behind the safety of familiar roads. It meant walking into places where few people had returned from. But adventure has a strange way of calling to certain people. And sometimes, the greatest journeys begin with the smallest choices. 3 days later, we left Ravenbrook Hollow, 4 travelers, 1 forgotten map, and a trail leading into the unknown. Our first destination was the location of the first marker. A place marked on the map as the hollow tree of the forgotten forest. None of us knew what waited there. None of us knew what the old explorers had discovered. And none of us knew that the treasure was not the only thing hidden along that path. Because some secrets are buried for a reason. And we were about to uncover one of them.